There's every chance someone somewhere on the complex will smash their PB, as happened here, and as a result breakfast time is buzzing, with people keen to show pictures and talk about what they've caught. But this is what fishing in France is all about, a great week away, with a far better than average chance of catching a right lump or two. This is why anglers cross the channel in their thousands year after year.
Well, there we go. I said I was waiting for a bigger one, and along it came. Had this one just before breakfast, 46 pound, proper old lump, big old long thing. Fought like an absolute demon. Oh, it's getting heavy, need to get down to the gym. Came on a choddy, this one. Gonna go through a few rigs and bits and bobs now, so I'll pop him back and we'll crack on. Well chuffed. Look at the mouth on that. Absolutely massive, chunky, and only a couple of hook holes in there too. Really, really clean. See the old curtain on the top there. And look at the size of that cheek, it's like a hamster. Has he got loads of boilies in there or something? Saving them for later. Hey! Just returning that one, and the right hand rod rips off. So it's on the top out there already. That's exactly what happens when the lead falls off, you know, just come to the surface. For some reason. You see it's right on the top, splashing about. Right, whilst I'm playing this one in, seeing as I was halfway through putting this one back, I may as well let him go. It's an absolute lump. Look at them scales across the back of it. There you go, mate. Off you go. Proper old lump. He certainly beat me up. Absolutely covered in slime. Aching like mad. That's all good fun. That's what we come to France for. Good bit of sport and the odd monster like that. Well, there we go. It's fish number 21. Not bad for a few days angling, eh? This one's probably around the 24-pound mark. Another corker. Going to pop him back and show you a bit about rigs. There's a couple of different presentations I use, so go over them and you might want to give them a go yourself.
People often think that when fishing for carp in France, they need to almost abandon the rigs they use in the UK in favour of highly complex presentations that take hours and hours to tie. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, and although British and French carp are separated by a few hundred miles and the English Channel, when it comes to catching them, starting with familiar tactics shouldn't leave you wanting.
As I mentioned, there's a couple of presentations that I've been mainly using, and to be fair, they're the ones that I normally use at home. First of which is the old chod rig. Straight on the line. I've never really been a fan of lead core, but it's banned here anyway, but as I say, I prefer it on the line. No leader knots up here. Obviously, you want to think of safety aspects. These beads have got to be able to pass up the line should you snap off for any reason. This is how I like to fish it. So I've got a nice little short pop-up section there. Have it roughly around about 8 inches from the lead, unless I'm fishing in deep silt or weed. The reason I have it that close to the lead is because I like that resistance from the lead to come into play quite quickly. Now I know there's a lot of people still struggle with the old choddies, can't really get their head around it all. There's a couple of guys around here that, you know, I mentioned it to them because they said they've got a lot of weed in front of them and they'd never used it before. So, you know, it is something worth giving a go. It's very simple to set up. All I've got on the line there is 2 solar beads threaded on with a sharp needle, so they give you a bit enough grip. Obviously a little short stiff pop-up section there with a nice little curve in it. That helps it curve around the bottom lip of the fish. Gives you a really good hook hole because you've got such a big gape there. Got a little bit of putty on the line and a little bit of putty on the swivel. As you can see, it's a size 8 ring swivel there rather than 11, which is what most people use. Reason being is just because the pop-ups are so buoyant, and I'd rather have a much, you know, really buoyant pop-up than one that's going to be sort of falling over during the night. Moving down, got a little section of a quarter shock leader sleeve there. I've just chopped the end off it, and that acts as a little buffer. When you've got a fish on, obviously that slides down the end there, and that just sort of just gives it a little bit of cushion there. You can see if you pull that down, you've got that little bit there, which is enough to stop it digging into one section of the line. You know, if you've got a solid bead or something on the end there and that swivel's pulling on one bit of the line all the time, there is a chance that it's going to create a weak spot. And that's another thing worth mentioning with this, is if you do have a fish, just take off your lead, lose the last 6 inches of line and retie it on again, because that bit of line will get damaged. I haven't actually had it break on me, but you know, you can see it getting damaged, so the last thing you want to do is lose a lump because you haven't retied that for the sake of one quick knot. Moving on to lead, that's a 2.5 ounce distance lead. I don't like to use anything more than 2.5 if I can get away with it with a choddy, because obviously it's banging around the fish's mouth, and there's obviously that chance of knocking the hook out or damaging the fish. That I've been managing to cast that sort of 120 yards all right, because it is literally a lead and just that little hook link section on there, it casts so well. You know, there's very little resistance, and you can chuck it a good long way, no problem. As I say, it's also great for fishing in weed. You know, if you want to pull it right up the line there, you can have it sort of 3-4 foot up the line, and then basically the lead will come down, hit the bottom, and the pop-up will just gently settle on top of any weed that's there. So, you know, it's a fantastic way of being able to fish in amongst weed, and that can be a great edge within itself. You know, the fish are very confident in feeding in the weed because they rarely get caught in it. So if you can present a bait well within it, then you stand a very good chance of catching well. Next up, even more simple really, just a nice little balanced bait rig. I've got a size 6 wide-gate barbless on there, little curve shrink tube, and what that little curve does is obviously A, it helps the hook turn in the first place, but B, it definitely helps that hook stay in place during the fight. You know, sometimes if the line goes slack or something and it shakes its head about, sometimes that hook can pop out, but that bit of shrink tube just helps it grip around the lip and keep it in place. So it is a real massively important thing when having to use barbless hooks. Bait wise there, you can see I've got quite a nice sized gap between the hook and the bait. That's a cell with a 10mm cell pop up. Both bits have got a bit trimmed off them, sort of a bit like a snowman presentation. These little mainline pop-ups, as I said, they're ridiculously buoyant, and that's great because it gives you so many options to be able to play around with balancing your baits out, and this sort of balances out. It doesn't sit the hook up, but the bait just sort of hovers off the bottom. And again, you know, I've spoken to people in the past who've done underwater filming, and they reckon that a little bait just set off the bottom, giving it that little bit of movement, catches their eye. So, I don't know, I think the fact that it's balanced obviously helps it come up in the fish's mouth nicely. And I fished that onto a Quarter Safe Zone leader. Obviously, these come in a variety of colours, but you know, you never know exactly what colour lake bed you're fishing on. So if you go with a clear one, you know that you should be all right. Little stick clip on the end of that to attach the rig onto. Now, Pva Bags, you know, I struggle to cast out without one if I'm using a bottom bait or a balanced bait, be it a little small one or a big one. I've been using quite big ones when I've been dropping it across with the bait boat. Again, it goes back to that confidence thing, you know, your hook's buried inside the bag, and the fish should be able to get it in its mouth, no problem should it come along and suck it. So I've got a bit of my old dust in there, and what I also like to do is just put a few hole boilies on. So I have them in the top so I know where they are, so I can put my hook in the other end and I know I'm not going to be hooked into the boilies. So I just compact that down. And again, you know, this is something I've been using a lot this year in my own fishing back home on weedy waters. Big old bag, hook link threaded down it, so everything's in amongst it. Your hook's pulled into the end. And then what I do is I put a little tail rubber on there, which I haven't got one to hand, and then clip that onto there. I see a lot of people using these clips without a rubber. Now, I really wouldn't recommend that, because all it takes is for that to slip off the double prongs there onto one prong like that, and then the strength of it, you know, is nowhere near as strong as it should be. However, if it's hooked over both and you've got a little bit of silicone, like I say, I use a tail rubber just to cover it up there, then there's no way that can slip off onto one of them prongs, and you know, them things are ridiculously strong and you're not going to have any issues. If you want to save yourself a lot of time and a fair few quid too, it's well worth investing in one of these little Jag Hook Sharpeners. Every time you reel in, even when you haven't had a fish and you reel in the morning, that hook is definitely not as sharp as it was when it went out the night before. Not only that, but you know, if you have a fish, it's a simple case of just giving it a little work and you've got a really sharp hook again. You haven't got to tie a new rig, so it does save you a lot of time. And obviously, you know, hooks are about 50p each these days. So, you know, why not save a few quid? Right, some people like to really work on their hook points and get them really fine. All I'm looking to do is get the very tip of it as sharp as I can. And a good way of testing that is just to hold the stiff bit of material here, so I'm not actually holding the hook, and just test it on your nail. Now that one is just sort of slipping across my nail really easily. So I'm just going to give it a little rub like that on that side, and I'm putting a minimum amount of pressure on that. Same again on the other side. And then on the front as well. Just really lightly, just touching the end of that hook point. And hopefully, you'll be able to see, there you go, look, straight away it's digging in. So you can see the difference that makes instantly. And you know, that will make all the difference out there as well. You need sticky, sharp hooks. If these fish mouth your bait and they feel a little prick, obviously they can suck and blow it out quite easily. The sharper that hook is, the more chance of them reacting, bolting off and setting that hook home. So that is a massive tip that will definitely catch you more fish. So there you go, that's the two sort of basic rigs I use. There's no point overcomplicating things. I think it's easy to sit there, you know, when you're not getting any action and start thinking, oh, it's your rigs, and you know, start coming up with all these fandango ideas. But the main thing is being in the right place and getting them feeding in the first place. And one thing when you're coming to France is worth being prepared. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's not worth going out and spending loads and loads of money on tackle that you probably won't need, you know. These lakes, they're more like English style lakes anyway. You don't need any special tackle. Majority of the casts, you know, are within casting range. Obviously, you can bring a boat to certain places should you wish. As far as gear goes, I mean, a decent bivvy, you're going to be here for a week, so it's worth investing in something proper, you know, a brolly. Even though it will do the job, you're going to be roughing it, and at the end of the day, when you're here for 7 nights, you want to be a little bit cosy. So I've got the old Tempest from Tracker. It's its first outing this week, and I've got to say I've been really impressed with it. Massive amounts of space in there, good coverage, and it's really, you know, solid as well. You know, there's nothing worse than the old backache from a rubbish bed chair. I've got the old Nash Indulgence one, just, you know, again, ridiculously comfortable, so does the job for me perfectly. Guest chair's always worth bringing. Obviously, you know, you're going to be sitting out and watching the lake a fair bit. If you're sitting on a bed chair, it tends to do your back in, so you want something that you can lean back on. Here at Cretelakes, actually have them here, so you don't have to bring it. Another thing worth bearing in mind is end tackle. A lot of lakes around here, you're fishing across the snags or, you know, weedy situations, that sort of thing. So you want to be dropping that lead to give you the best chance of landing a fish. So you might go for a few leads, so it's worth stocking up and things like that, especially, you know, hooks and all those sort of bits and bobs that you're going to go through. So make sure you've got plenty and you're well prepared on that front. Clothes is another one. You know, you tend to go through quite a few. You get wet from the rain, you get wet from fish, you get slimy and smelly. So a few extra t-shirts, a few pairs of trousers. Waterproof trousers are always a good one, and obviously a decent waterproof jacket. The weather out here can be really unpredictable at times. I mean, I've seen rain in the last few days heavier than I've ever seen rain before. So yeah, good pair of waterproofs means that you can get out and redo your rods without getting an absolute drenching. Bait-wise, it's worth stocking up. You know, these lakes are full of big fish that trough down the boilies big style. And if you're on them and you're catching a lot, then you could easily go through sort of 20, 30 key in a week. So what I'd recommend is bring 10 key minimum, and then just make sure that whatever venue you're going to has got backup there should you need to buy any more. One other thing I like to do is bring 2 nets. Now you can borrow mates from back home to save you buying an extra one. Sometimes out here things can get a little bit hectic, and if you haven't got anyone near you, you might find yourself getting a bit stuck. So another net, always handy. Lastly, unhooking mats. A lot of the venues out in France have them in place, so that saves you taking a big bulky item out and then having to take a big bulky, wet, smelly item back. So just check with a venue first and see if they've got them there.
Now's the time of year people are booking their summer trips to France, and as we've said, we've tried to give you a bit of an insight into what it takes to succeed here. If you've always fancied a trip across the Channel, but for whatever reason have never done so, then we'd encourage you to go for it. It really is a great week. Loads of relaxation, loads of fun, and hopefully loads of fish.
Preparation. Whenever you're coming on one of these French trips, there's a few simple things that you want to consider. First of all, reels loaded with a good strong, good quality 15-pound line. You need to be bringing a variety of hooks, a variety of hook lengths. Any situation that you may find yourself in any of these pegs on these lakes. Could be up against snags, you could be open water fishing, you could be using a lot of bait, you could be using a little bit of bait, stick mixes, PVA. So many anglers turn up here without even a marker rod, and the first thing you need to do is when you get on any venue, especially one you haven't been to before, is obviously have a look at what's out in front of you. Some pegs are blatantly obvious, where to put baits. Others, are going to require a little bit of time, so therefore you're going to need a marker rod. Good quality stuff is always going to pay dividends in the end. We see it week in, week out, where anglers maybe turn up with not enough line, so they can't get out to there, or they're fishing up against snags with a 10-pound line. It just ain't going to work. So being prepared for a trip you've waited a long time to come on is very, very important. When you come on these trips, the best thing to do is, when people come here, or drive yourself, or you get off the coach, whatever, come here, have a little walk around the lakes and try and fish to your strengths. Don't go on a lake or, start looking at swims that are 120-yard casts when you can only cast to maybe 60, 70 yards. Try to fish to your strengths. If you're going to fish up against snags, be prepared that you can't be talking to your mate 10 yards away, because the fish will be through the snags before you can blink. Again, it's something we see quite a lot of here. Anglers will be going into pegs where it's beyond their capability to cast to the far bank, or they just simply haven't got the tackle to do that. So another very important tip would be, come onto this venue, look around at the pegs, look around at the lakes, and try to fish to your strengths. What we always recommend here is little 2-inch PVA sticks. We actually sell the colder stuff in the shop there. It's very effective here because little silt pockets in that on the lake bed, or because people are fishing under the snags, you get a lot of little debris, twigs, leaves, all that kind of stuff. But even out in the centre of the lake, you get little bits of weed on the bottom. With a PVA stick, it just rests nicely. Nice bed of bait around it. You're always presenting your bait to the fish. It's no good, casting out into the middle of a lake with absolutely nothing, landing a weed bed, and your rig's all tied up. You're just wasting time. You want to get here, you want to be presenting your bait to the fish on day one. Okay, another thing we quite often see is people putting out big beds of bait. They fish over it for literally 24 hours, only to move it. Is what will happen then is the obvious, the fish will just move and mop everything up. So when you're in a peg, you're building it from the Saturday, you're building the peg to last you the week. So it may not happen immediately, it might not happen till the Monday. But the bailiffs normally, once they've put you on these spots, or they've put you on the best areas within that peg, you're there for the week. So bear that in mind instead of just moving straight away. Stay on your spots, and it normally pays dividends.